How does the
fault? We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Mr. Attorney General, we don't have the report in hand, so could you explain for us the special counsel's articulated reason for not reaching a decision on obstruction of justice, and if it had anything to do with the department's long-standing guidance on not indicting a sitting president? And you say you disagreed with some of his legal theories. What did you disagree with him on?
I'd leave it to his description in the report, the special counsel's own articulation of why he did not want to make a determination as to whether or not there was an obstruction offense. But I will say that when we met with him, Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein and I met with him along with Ed O'Callahan, who is the principal associate deputy. On March 5th, we specifically asked him about the OLC opinion and whether or not he was taking the position that he would have found a crime but for the existence of the OLC opinion. And he made it very clear several times that that was not his position. He was not saying that but for the OLC opinion he would have found a crime. He made it clear that he had not made the determination that there was a crime.
That's false. That is a lie. That is dishonest. And that is not what the report says. I could read it to you. He says that he talked to Bob Mueller. Bob Mueller's got to testify, everybody. The subpoena went out, I know that. And Bob Mueller was asked to come to Congress and give testimony, and I'm sure that that will happen. However, that press conference was such a violation of his office as Attorney General of the United States. That man right there is supposed to be our attorney. He's supposed to be the attorney for the people, and he is the attorney for Donald Trump, and he lied. He lied. He was dishonest. He gave out false information, and here's how we know. This is exactly what Bob Mueller wrote. This is page 1 of volume 2. Swear to God, this is what we've been doing all morning, all right? He wrote that he could not traditionally prosecute the president because of the Office of Legal Counsel's conclusion that a sitting president cannot be indicted. And we've been telling you all this for, what, a year and a half now? 2 years, something like this? That was the way Bob Mueller would approach this? Well, this is exactly what the words on the paper say. First, a traditional prosecution or declination decision entails a binary determination to initiate or decline a prosecution. But we determined not to make a traditional prosecutorial judgment. The Office of Legal Counsel, OLC, has issued an opinion finding that, quote, the indictment or criminal prosecution of a sitting president would impermissibly undermine the capacity of the executive branch to perform its constitutionally assigned functions in violation of the constitutional separation of powers, given the role of the special counsel as an attorney in the Department of Justice and the framework of the special counsel regulations. This office accepted OLC's legal conclusion for the purpose of exercising prosecutorial jurisdiction. He did conclude that but for the OLC, but for the Office of Legal Counsel's rule, it's not a law, it's a rule, and Bob Mueller decided that that's the rule he would follow, that you cannot indict a sitting president. But for the OLC's decision, their opinion, their judgment, their memo, Donald Trump would be indicted today. That is a fact. And it goes on to say that the president will probably be prosecuted after he leaves office. It also goes on to say that he's going to preserve all evidence. He says, second, while the OLC opinion concludes that a sitting president may not be prosecuted, it recognizes that a criminal investigation during the president's term is permissible. The OLC opinion also recognizes that a president does not have immunity after he leaves office. And if individuals other than the president committed an obstruction offense, they may be prosecuted at this time. Given those considerations, the facts known to us, and the strong public interest in safeguarding the integrity of the criminal justice system, we conducted a thorough factual investigation in order to preserve the evidence when memories were fresh and documentary materials were available. Mueller is saying, Congress, this is up to you. You know, Article 2 powers, say the president can't be indicted. But the Article 1 powers hold that the Congress is the proper venue to punish a president, to indict a president, to accuse a president, and that the Senate is the appropriate place to try a president. And then he goes on to say, because no charges could be brought, he won't accuse the president of committing any crime. He won't decline to say that the president committed a crime. He also won't charge the president with a crime because he says that the president, just like any other person, deserves the presumption of innocence and the ability to defend himself. And that if he brought charges against the president would not be able to defend himself in a court of law while he's president. Why, I have no idea. But this is what it's a fairness concerns counseled against potentially reaching that judgment when no charges can be brought. Okay? And that's why they didn't charge the president with any crimes. He said the ordinary means for an individual to respond to an accusation is through a speedy and public trial. Okay. With all the procedural protections that surround a criminal case, an individual who believes he was wrongly accused can use that process to seek to clear his name. In contrast, a prosecutor's judgment that crimes were committed, but that no charges can be brought, affords no such adversarial opportunity for public name clearing before an impartial adjudicator. He's saying he didn't charge the president with a crime because the president would never be able to clear his name while he was president. And that the place for the president to go and testify, the place for the president to answer the charges, the place for the president to have a trial is in the Senate, the United States Senate. That the House has the proper responsibility to indict, and that's why he didn't do it. That's what this says. But Bill Barr just stood there and lied to you this morning. He absolutely made stuff up.
Mr. Attorney General, we don't have the report in hand. So could you explain for us the special counsel's articulated reason for not reaching a decision on obstruction of justice, and if it had anything to do with the department's longstanding guidance on not indicting a sitting president? And you say you disagreed with some of his legal theories. What did you disagree with him on?
I'd leave it to his description in the report, the special counsel's own articulation of why he did not want to make a determination as to whether or not there was an obstruction offense. But I will say that when we met with him, Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein and I met with him along with Ed O'Callahan, who is the principal associate deputy. On March 5th, we specifically asked him about the OLC opinion and whether or not he was taking the position that he would have found a crime but for the existence of the OLC opinion. And he made it very clear several times that that was not his position.
That is his position. That is exactly his position. I just read you his position. He said if we thought he committed a crime, we still couldn't indict him. We still couldn't charge him. And we can't exonerate him. That's what this says. And they're preserving the evidence, and that the president can face an indictment when he leaves office because he doesn't take immunity with him when he leaves. That is what he said.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Then you got into this very curious area where the Attorney General seemed almost to be acting as the counselor for the defense, for the counselor for the president, rather than the Attorney General talking about his motives, talking about his anger, his feeling that this was unfair and there were leaks, and really, as I say, making a case for the president. I suspect the Democrats' heads on Capitol Hill were exploding, and they're going to come down very sharply about the way that Bill Barr today laid this out.
Yeah, because Bill Barr was not acting as the Attorney General of the United States. Bill Barr was acting as Donald Trump's personal attorney. He finally got the kind of Attorney General that he desired. He finally got somebody who would lie for him. He finally got somebody who has absolutely no care in the world about his reputation or thinks that he's smarter than everybody and that nobody's going to read these 400 pages. And he's absolutely wrong. He's so wrong, I can't even tell you. So let me just tell you what happened. I'll tell you what happened in a nutshell, and then we'll start to read you the relevant portions, because this is exactly what you think happened, what we told you happened, what the New York Times and the Washington Post and people that were following the story. BuzzFeed was only slightly off with one word about Michael Cohen lying to Congress with the president's knowledge. The president did know that Michael Cohen was giving false testimony and was going to give false testimony. And Donald Trump's attorney actually encouraged Michael Cohen and deleted a line from Michael Cohen's testimony that they didn't want Michael Cohen to testify to because they thought it would open the door for Michael Cohen's honest and truthful testimony. So you have a president who sits there and not only knows the law is being violated, encourages the law to be violated, actually cheers for the law to be violated. And that is a president that you cannot have as president. It's just that simple. So here's what happened in a nutshell. The cover-up by Donald Trump and his campaign advisors and Roger Stone and Jerome Corsi, who were not part of the campaign, the whole cover-up worked. It worked, and I'll show you how it worked, because I'm going to read you Bob Mueller telling you that the cover-up worked. I'm telling you, this is hair raising. Okay, I'm just gonna, I went through the part where he said that he could not indict the president. He said the concerns about the fairness of an indictment would be heightened in the case of a sitting president, where a federal prosecutor's accusation of a crime, even in an internal report, could carry consequences that extend beyond the realm of criminal justice. The OLC noted similar concerns about sealed indictments. Couldn't even indict the president under seal, because he said even if an indictment were sealed during the president's term, the Office of Legal Counsel reasoned, and this is the old opinion he's relying on, quote, it would be very difficult to preserve an indictment's secrecy. And if an indictment became public, the stigma and opprobrium could imperil the president's ability to govern. Although a prosecutor's internal report would not represent a formal public accusation akin to an indictment, the possibility alone of the report's public disclosure and the absence of a neutral adjudicatory forum to review its findings counseled against potentially determining that the person's conduct constitutes a federal offense. So he couldn't even seal up an indictment, which obviously he wants to do. He said, fourth, if we had confidence after a thorough investigation of the facts that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would so state. Based on the facts and the applicable legal standards, however, we are unable to reach that judgment. The evidence we obtained about the president's actions and intent presents difficult issues that prevent us from conclusively determining that no criminal conduct occurred. Accordingly, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. See, Mueller wanted to charge the president. Mueller wanted to indict the president. Mueller wanted a sealed indictment of the president, but Mueller believes, as an institutionalist, the word of the day, I think, that he couldn't, but for the OLC decision, and Bill Barr and Rod and the Beard stood there and lied to you. They lied to you this morning. That is just not true. All right, let's show you why obstruction worked. Let's read Mueller's words on what the dealio is on the obstruction, okay? This is, I think, page 9. Oh, what did I do? I'll read it off the computer here. Second, while the investigation identified numerous links between individuals with ties to the Russian government and individuals associated with the Trump campaign, the evidence was not sufficient to support criminal charges. Among other things, the evidence was not sufficient to charge any campaign official as, and these were the crimes that he thinks that he could charge, okay, as an unregistered agent of the Russian government or another Russian principal. And our evidence about the June 9th meeting and WikiLeaks releases of hacked materials were not sufficient to charge a criminal campaign finance violation. Further, the evidence was not sufficient to charge that any member of the Trump campaign conspired with representatives of the Russian government to interfere in the 2016 election. Now, here's why. Here's why they didn't have the evidence. It said this is the third reason why. He said the investigation established that several individuals affiliated with the Trump campaign lied to this office, lied to Congress about their interactions with Russian affiliated individuals in related matters. Those lies materially impaired the investigation of Russian election interference. The office charged some of those lies as violations of the federal false statements statute. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn pled guilty to lying about his interactions with Russian Ambassador Kislyak during the transition period. George Papadopoulos, a foreign policy advisor during the campaign period, pleaded guilty to lying to investigators about the nature and timing of his interactions with Professor Joseph Misfud, the man from Malta, the professor who told Papadopoulos that the Russians had dirt on candidate Clinton in the form of thousands of emails. Former Trump Organization attorney Michael Cohen pled guilty to making false statements to Congress about the Trump Tower project. And then there's something redacted in there. And in February 2019, the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia found that Manafort lied to the office and the grand jury concerning his interactions and communications with Konstantin Kilimnik and Trump campaign polling data. And he goes on to say that the office was being lied to so hard and that they deleted, that they deleted relevant communications. They communicated during the relevant period using apps that feature encryption devices that don't provide for the long-term retention of their communications records. People literally destroyed evidence.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
As the special counsel report makes clear, the Russian government sought to interfere in our election process. But thanks to the special counsel's thorough investigation, we now know that the Russian operatives who perpetrated these schemes did not have the cooperation of President Trump or the Trump campaign, or the knowing assistance of any other American for that matter. That is something that all Americans can and should be grateful to have confirmed.
Yeah, except it's not confirmed. What Mueller has said in this report is that his office was following the Office of Legal Counsel's no indictment of a sitting president rule from the get-go. All right. And so when they were putting together this information, which is all this is, it's an information. It isn't an indictment. It isn't an exoneration. It isn't a clearing of the. He goes through meticulously all of the contacts, all of the, the polling information that Manafort gave to Konstantin Kilimnik. Okay, just on that one issue alone, the special counsel, Robert Mueller's team, concluded that Konstantin Kilimnik is a Russian intelligence operative. Okay, that's very important. So they agree that Konstantin Kilimnik is a Russian intelligence operative, and that Manafort gave him polling data. And now we know what the polling data was. This made my hair stand up on the back of my neck. This is here. Manafort briefed Kilimnik. This is page 140. Manafort briefed Kilimnik on the state of the Trump campaign and Manafort's plan to win the election. That briefing encompassed the campaign's messaging and its internal polling data. According to Gates, this is Rick Gates, Manafort's partner that's been cooperating, right? Because it was Manafort and Gates, that was the lobby shop. According to Rick Gates, it also included discussions of battleground states, which Manafort identified as Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. Those were the states that Donald Trump won by less than 22,000 votes. 40,000 votes. I mean, this is so amazing. And Barr is standing there saying, "Oh, there was no one, not one American, not anybody in the campaign, not anybody who was, cooperating." That's bullcrap. What Mueller said is that the office learned, and now I'm quoting, the office learned that some of the individuals we interviewed or whose conduct we investigated, including some associated with the Trump campaign, deleted relevant communications, that's destroying evidence, or communicated during the relevant period using applications that feature encryption or that do not provide for long-term retention of data or communication records. In such cases, the office was not able to corroborate witnesses' statements through comparison to contemporaneous communications or fully question witnesses about statements that appeared inconsistent with other known facts. Accordingly, while this report embodies factual and legal determinations that the office believes to be accurate and complete to the greatest extent possible given these identified gaps, the office cannot rule out the possibility that the unavailable information would shed additional light on or cast a new light on the events described in this report. And that is in Volume 1. And Volume 1 has to do with collusion. Volume 1 has to do with a conspiracy to defraud the United States. And he is saying, I can't say if he did or not because they destroyed so much evidence. And they lied so many times to Congress, to us, and there's no contemporaneous document. The text messages are gone. They're using Jabber, and he names some of the platform. He said the information was just destroyed, and there's just no way, and it had a material impact on the investigation. And Bill Barr stood there this morning and said, and thanks to the special counsel, we now know that no American. This is not true. This is false. This is a lie. This is wrong. This is dishonest. And so now what we know is that the cover-up worked. We know that we were played as a country. We know that we are still being played as a country. We know that the presidency the presidency is destroyed. The presidency, never mind the president who occupies the Oval, the presidency of the United States is destroyed. The president is a crime boss. There's the whole thing with Michael Cohen, and that he knew that Michael Cohen was giving false testimony as the president of the United States. He actually not only didn't faithfully execute the laws, but he allowed the laws to be broken on his watch while he knew and watched. Everyone lied. The president knew they were lying. In one part of this, Trump sits back when Rosenstein enters the Oval Office and he tells Donald Trump that Rosenstein tells Sessions, and Sessions walks into the Oval Office and he tells the president that a special counsel has been appointed after he fires James Comey. The president sits back, slumps back in his chair, and says, "I'm fucked." The president knew what he did. And that's why everybody lied. You know, the big question we always had was, why is he lying so much? Because he knew what he did. Because he knew that he had the Trump Tower deal going. Because he knew that Michael Cohen lied to Congress. Because he knew that meeting in Trump Tower was not about adoption and he lied and dictated a false memo. He knew what he did and he knows what he did. And that's why the presidency is an emergency situation right now. Never mind, the president of the United States is a very bad man. The president of the United States is a mob boss. The president of the United States is a failed reality TV star who actually parlayed, fame. Remember, they used to say, "Oh, Obama, he's a celebrity." No, this guy is really a celebrity. This guy is a total celebrity with an entire news network that repeats everything he says falsely, so that people can be indoctrinated into believing that nothing you saw, nothing you heard, nothing that really happened, to make you feel insane, to make you feel crazy. And the truth of the matter is that this presidency is a absolute disaster. It's a disgrace. But more than Trump is the office, is the awesome powers that go with that office. It's ruined. All that Mueller said was that Trump didn't have an agreement with the Russian government to hack. Okay? Trump didn't help the Russians hack. Nobody ever said that Trump helped the Russians hack. He didn't. The Russians did that by themselves and told George Papadopoulos that they had done it, and now they had thousands of Hillary Clinton's emails, and that they could win the presidency for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump sat back and loved it. Loved it. Junior sat back and loved it. They actually applauded it, cheered it, and asked for more help. And then the cover-up, everybody lied.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
First, the report details efforts by the Internet Research Agency, a Russian company with close ties to the Russian government, to sow social discord among American voters through disinformation and social media operations. The special counsel found no collusion by any Americans in IRA's illegal activities.
All right, so all he said there was that nobody helped IRA, the Internet Research Agency, hack, nor did they pay for any of the social media ads. That's all he's saying there, is that nobody in the Trump campaign helped the Russian government hack, and nobody paid for the ads. However, in Mueller's report, he does say that they retweet those ads, that they knew when the WikiLeaks dumps were coming, and that they coordinated their campaign around those WikiLeaks dumps. And the only time, according to this entire story that's laid out here in all its glory, which is exactly the story that every single decent journalist has been telling you, would be proven, would be shown, that it did happen. The only time that they were caught off guard about a WikiLeaks dump was the day the Access Hollywood tape was put out in the public. And less than an hour later, Jerome Corsi and Roger Stone were trying desperately to get a message to WikiLeaks to dump more materials, to take the focus off the Access Hollywood tape that caught them by surprise. And they did get a release of more of Podesta's emails an hour later. Other than that, the campaign totally knew when the dumps were coming. Yes, it's true that, the WikiLeaks stuff is almost all redacted. And the reason why, you're given a reason, and the reason is harm to an ongoing matter. So that means Roger Stone. That means Jerome Corsi. God only knows if it means Junior. I don't know, but there are, there's evidence that Junior's direct messaging and retweeting, and he's, communicating, and the same thing with Roger Stone and Jerome Corsi. They say that he thinks that he got in touch with Ted Malloch, and that Ted Malloch did speak to Julian Assange. Oh, and that's another ongoing matter, is the case of Julian Assange. Now, for those of you who think Julian Assange is into transparency, Julian Assange is into revenge. There is no mistake that Julian Assange was into revenge against Hillary Clinton because Hillary Clinton was the last document dump that he did. The State Department document dump, the Chelsea Manning document dump, the 2010 State Department document dump when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. And so he knew that if Hillary Clinton became president, he would be extradited and he would be sent back to the United States. And so he decided to help the Russians disseminate all of this stolen material as a revenge move. As a revenge move, because he thought Donald Trump would love him. Now, you see, Julian, I got to tell you, betting on Donald Trump getting you back, stupid. Really dumb. Donald Trump doesn't get anybody's back. Also in this report, Donald Trump actually says the words to Michael Cohen, "I got your back." He also dangles pardons from Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort. All those things that we thought were true, they're true. Don't let anybody tell you that this didn't occur and you didn't hear him and you didn't see these emails and you didn't see these direct messages. You saw what you saw. You heard what you heard. All right. In the next hour, I'm just going to go through the collusion part. The obstruction part is super painful because there's instant after instant after instant of suborning perjury, of destroying evidence, of deleting emails, which, everything they accused Hillary Clinton of doing, the Trump people did. Okay, they lied to Congress. They lied to the special counsel's office. They lied. They destroyed communications. Now you know why they went with so much force at Roger Stone's house. Now you know why. Because previously everybody had destroyed their emails. They deleted relevant communications or communicated during the relevant period using applications that feature encryption or that do not provide for long-term retention of data or communication records. In such cases, the Office of Special Counsel was not able to corroborate witness statements through comparison to contemporaneous communications. We were not able to fully question witnesses about statements that appeared inconsistent with other known facts. Accordingly, while this report embodies factual and legal determinations that the office believes to be accurate and complete to the greatest extent possible, given these identified gaps, the office cannot rule out the possibility that the unavailable information would shed additional light on, or cast in a new light, the events described in the report. This is hardly a clearing of Donald Trump benefiting from, accepting help from, asking for help from Russians. This is anything but that.
Second, the report details efforts by the Russian military officials associated with the GRU, the Russian Military Intelligence Organization, to hack into computers and steal documents and emails from individuals associated with the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton's campaign for the purpose of eventually publicizing these documents. There was no evidence of the Trump campaign collusion with the Russian government's hacking. After finding no underlying collusion with Russia, the special counsel's report goes on to consider whether certain actions of the president could amount to obstruction of the special counsel's investigation. The report recounts 10 episodes involving the president and discusses potential legal theories for connecting those activities to the elements of an obstruction offense. The Deputy Attorney General and I concluded that the evidence developed by the special counsel is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense.
Yeah, he took it into his own purview to clear the president of 10 obstruction of justice episodes. There are more than that in this report, okay? And all he said there was that Donald Trump and nobody in America helped the Russian government hack. Now, as far as collusion goes, this is what Mueller wrote. He said, in evaluating whether evidence about collective action of multiple individuals constituted a crime, we applied the framework of conspiracy law, not the concept of collusion. In so doing, the office recognized that the word collude was used in communications with the acting attorney general, confirming certain aspects of the investigation's scope, and that the term had been frequently invoked in public reporting about the investigation. But collusion is not a specific offense or a theory of liability found in the United States Code, nor is it a term of art in federal law. We told you collusion is not anything in the... What Mueller had to work with, and this is sad, and this needs to be changed and fixed. What Mueller had to work with was a campaign finance law to decide whether or not Junior got something of value at the Trump Tower meeting. And because you know that Junior's answers, his answers to Mueller, you know what they were? Over and over and over. I don't recall. Did your father know? I don't recall. Did you ask your father? I don't recall. And also, with regard to cooperation that Bill Barr asserted this morning, Donald Trump cooperated fully, and this is why we don't want to charge him with obstruction, because he was so cooperative. Number one, Donald Trump never sat down for an interview with the special counsel. He said he would. He was looking forward to it. That was a lie. That was false. That was dishonest, disingenuous, whatever you want to call it. He never sat down with it for an interview. Number two, in all of his written questions, he refused to answer any single question about obstruction. And number three, in his written answers, he said, I don't recall, 30 times. 30 times. That is not what you would characterize as cooperation. And because there is no trial yet of the president, see, if you go to a deposition, or if you or answer an interrogatory, which is what a written questionnaire is, it's called an interrogatory, and that comes before your deposition so that the lawyers can question your answers that you gave in writing orally, right, to see if you are committed to them. He wrote, I don't recall, 30 times, and there is no way to question him about the veracity, the truthfulness of not recalling. Because I told you, if you do recall but you say you don't, that's perjury. If you really don't recall, then you've got Alzheimer's or you have senility. Because these questions were long, there were lots of instances where he commented on things he did publicly, but in the answers that he gave, he said he doesn't recall.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
The Attorney General appears to be waging a media campaign on behalf of President Trump, the very subject of the investigation at the heart of the Mueller report. Rather than letting the facts of the report speak for themselves, the Attorney General has taken unprecedented steps to spin Mueller's nearly 2-year investigation. 1. He summarized the report and cherry-picked findings in his March 24th letter to Congress. 2, he withheld summaries written by the special counsel that were intended for public consumption. 3, he has briefed the White House on the report before providing Congress a copy, which has helped them prepare a rebuttal response for the president. And now, the evening before the report's scheduled release, the Department of Justice has informed the committee that it will receive a copy between 11 a.m. and noon, well after the Attorney General's 9:30 a.m. press conference. This is wrong. It is contrary to the Attorney General's own words to the committee. Quote, "I do not believe it would be in the public's interest for me to attempt to summarize the full report or to release it in serial or piecemeal fashion." Close quote.
That's what he did.
It now appears the Attorney General intends to once again put his own spin on the investigative work completed by the special counsel and his team. The fact that the Attorney General is not releasing even the redacted report to Congress until after his press conference will again result in the report being presented through his own words rather than through the words of Special Counsel Mueller. The central concern here is that the Attorney General Barr is not allowing the facts of the Mueller report to speak for themselves, but is trying to bake in the narrative about the report to the benefit of the White House. And of course, he's doing this just before the holiday weekend, so it's extraordinarily difficult for anybody to react. This is wrong. It is not the proper role of the Attorney General.
Yeah, and I think, I saw some tweeting going on from the transparency people last night saying, oh, he's just going to explain the redactions or the process he went through. Oh, no. Bill Barr actually characterized erroneously, wrongly, and deceptively, dishonestly, disingenuously, Mueller's own words. Mueller couldn't conclude that a crime of collusion or conspiracy happened because everybody destroyed evidence, everybody lied, there was no way to compare their testimony with things that were otherwise known. They couldn't hold them responsible for a lot of the lying that went on. Now, some people did get prosecuted, others didn't. And this report is 400 pages, and like we said, there was no way that it took 400 pages to say really nice things about Donald Trump. There was no way that 400 pages were going to have good news for Donald Trump, and guess what? It doesn't. It doesn't have good news for Trump. It doesn't have good news for Stone. It doesn't have good news for Corsi. It doesn't have good news for Flynn. It doesn't have good news for Manafort. In fact, Manafort, my God, the identifying, aspect of the polling data was specifically to target people in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. Oh my God, how granular can you get? I mean, this is hair raising. This report, literally hair raising. Now, I had some time with it. I have to read. Volume 1 is the conspiracy part. Volume 1 is about what happened, that the Russians attacked us, how they did it, who did it, and that the Trump campaign didn't help Russia to do the actual hacking, and that's because they were too stupid. I mean, if they thought that they had, the brains to do it, believe me, they would have said, believe me, we can help you. We'll do whatever you want. And they didn't buy the Facebook ads. No, they just retweeted them. They just, shared them. They only knew when the dumps were coming. And the only time they were caught off guard was the Access Hollywood day. And that's why Jerome Corsi is in the doghouse. That's why he's in deep duty. Okay? But this is just the most amazing thing. Here is the executive summary that he did not want you to see. This is what Bill Barr hid from you. And this is the conspiracy part. This is the whole attack that was... And it's... They call it an attack. They called it information warfare in this report. And why did Mueller call it information warfare? Because we were attacked. And Mueller can't substantiate. He can't charge the president in the first place. And that's what he says, in this report, at the beginning of this report and at the end of this report. He's trying to send a big, giant, flashing red light to Congress saying, this happened. And the only venue where the president of the United States, any president, in his opinion, can be held responsible, can be indicted, can be tried, is Congress. Only the House can indict. I can't. Only the Senate can try. A court of law cannot. There are rules for the president that are enshrined in the Constitution, and I believe in them. And so, therefore, the Office of Legal Counsel, their opinion that the only remedy for a criminal president, the only remedy for abuse of power, the only remedy for obstruction of justice, if a president, does that, the only remedy for a president who suborns perjury, the only remedy for a president who destroys evidence, the only remedy for a president who accepts and cheers on a foreign adversary's intervention and information warfare campaign on the American people. The only place that you can indict a sitting president for such behavior is the House of Representatives. And the only place where you could try a president for any of those crimes, all the aforementioned, conspiracy to defraud, all the way to obstruction, all the way to suborning perjury, all the way, is the Senate. They are the only body in the entire United States that can hold a president accountable for lawlessness. And he lays out a roadmap for Congress to follow if they would care to hold this president accountable. Oh, and I got to tell you, just a little snippet of information. This is really creepy. Apparently, the way that the president found out about Jim Comey's counterintelligence, the investigation. You remember James Comey started a counterintelligence investigation at the very beginning, and he said that Trump wasn't a target. Remember that? When Comey testified? Well, apparently, the way that the president found out that there was an open counterintelligence investigation that Comey had opened is because Comey secretly briefed the Gang of Eight, the congressional leaders, the Intel and Judiciary Committee chairman and ranking, and the Senate Intelligence Committee chairman, Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina. He literally called the office. He called Don McGahn over at the White House, the president, the White House counsel, and he tipped him off. He literally tipped him off. March 9th, Comey briefed the Gang of Eight congressional leaders about the FBI's investigation of Russian interference, including the identification of the principal U.S. subjects of the investigation. And although it's unclear whether the president knew that that briefing at that time was taking place, notes taken by Annie Donaldson, then McGahn's chief of staff, on March 12th, state POTUS is in a panic, in chaos, need binders to put in front of POTUS, all things related to Russia. The week after Comey's briefing, the White House counsel's office was in contact with the Senate Intelligence Chairman, Senator Richard Burr, about the Russian investigations and appears to have received information about the status of the FBI investigation from him.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
In assessing the president's actions discussed in the report, it is important to bear in mind the context. President Trump faced an unprecedented situation. As he entered into office and sought to perform his responsibilities as president, federal agents and prosecutors were scrutinizing his conduct before and after taking office and the conduct of some of his associates. At the same time, there was relentless speculation in the news media about the president's personal culpability. Yet, as he said from the beginning, there was in fact no collusion. And as the special counsel's report acknowledges, there is substantial evidence to show that the president was frustrated and angered by his sincere belief that the investigation was undermining his presidency, propelled by his political opponents and fueled by illegal leaks. Nonetheless, the White House fully cooperated with the special counsel's investigation, providing unfettered access to campaign and White House documents, directing senior aides to testify freely, and asserting no privilege claims. And at the same time, the president took no act that in fact deprived the special counsel of the documents and witnesses necessary to complete his investigation.
Yeah, that claim of cooperation is also disingenuous. It's also a lie. It's also false. It's also bullcrap is what it is, because the president refused to sit down for an interview with Bob Mueller, and his answers to the written questions, 30 times he said, "I don't recall." I mean, this is really quite a dog and pony show we witnessed this morning on behalf of the people's attorney, Bill Barr, who, by the way, is going. His hearing is going to be May 2nd, so that hearing's going to be crazy. That's going to be nuts because. And why they don't play clips in these hearings, I have no idea. I mean, they have an AV squad in the House of Representatives or in the Senate? It makes no sense to me that you can't confront Bill Barr with his own words and Mueller's own words in the same breath. I don't know why they don't do it that way, but I mean, the people of the United States need to see Bill Barr saying that stuff and then quoting Mueller saying 30 times the president said he didn't recall, and he said he didn't recall things that he had reacted to in public, and that his interrogatories, his written answers, he refused to answer one single question about obstruction. He wouldn't even entertain the idea of a sit-down interview with Mueller, and if he had nothing to hide and nothing to fear, and he would tell the truth, then he would have no problem with it. In fact, told you that. He told the American people, I look forward to testify. I look forward to talking to Mueller. I'll sit down with him anytime. And his own lawyer said, that's just not a good idea, sir. It's ridiculous. Now, here's what happened, okay? This thing has been going on so long, way before you and I ever even thought it was going on. The Internet Research Agency, now that is a company that's owned by Putin's chef, Mr. Prigozhin, okay? So the Internet Research Agency carried out the earliest Russian interference operations identified by the investigation. A social media campaign designed to provoke and amplify political and social discord inside the United States. They were based in St. Petersburg, Russia. They got funding from the Russian oligarch Yevgeny Prigozhin, who is Putin's chef, and companies that he controlled. Prigozhin is widely reported to have ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin, and then something is redacted. In mid-2014, the IRA sent employees to the United States on an intelligence gathering mission with instructions redacted. The IRA later used social media accounts and interest groups to sow discord in the United States political system through what it termed information warfare. The campaign evolved from a generalized program designed in 2014 and 15 to undermine the U.S. electoral system to a targeted operation that by early 2016 favored candidate Trump and disparaged candidate Clinton. The IRA's operation also included the purchase of political advertisements on social media in the United States. And the names of U.S. persons and entities, as well as the staging of political rallies inside the United States. To organize those rallies, IRA employees posed as United States grassroots entities and persons and made contact with Trump supporters and Trump campaign officials in the United States. The investigation did not identify evidence that any U.S. persons conspired or coordinated with the IRA, this specific hacking group, okay, this specific oligarch's company. That's what it says. The IRA. Those were the hackers. At the same time that the IRA operation began to focus on supporting candidate Trump in early 2016, the Russian government employed a second form of interference. Cyber intrusions, hacking, and releases of hacked materials damaging to Clinton campaign. The Russian intelligence service known as the main intelligence directorate of the General Staff of the Russian Army, GRU, carried out these operations. In March 2016, so right there, hello, you have a president who said could be China, could be Russia, could be a fat guy sitting on the edge of his bed. And to this day, he stood on a stage in Helsinki knowing this and said he believed Putin over the intelligence agencies. He believed Putin. In March 2016, the GRU began hacking the email accounts of Clinton campaign volunteers and employees, including campaign chair John Podesta. In April 2016, the GRU hacked into the computer networks of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee and the Democratic National Committee. The GRU stole hundreds of thousands of documents from the compromised email accounts and networks. Around that time, the DNC announced in mid-June 2016 the Russian government's role in hacking its network. The GRU decided to disseminate stolen materials through the fictitious online personas DC Leaks and Guccifer 2.0. The GRU later released additional materials through the organization WikiLeaks. The presidential campaign of Donald J. Trump showed interest in WikiLeaks releases of documents and welcomed their potential damage to candidate Clinton. Beginning in June 2016, redacted. So, it's something forecast to senior campaign officials that WikiLeaks would release information damaging to candidate Clinton. WikiLeaks' first release came July 2016. Around the same time, candidate Trump announced that he hoped Russia, if they were listening, could recover emails described as missing from a private server used by Clinton when she was Secretary of State. He later said he was speaking sarcastically, and then an entire paragraph is redacted. WikiLeaks began releasing Podesta's stolen emails on October 7, 2016, less than 1 hour after a U.S. media outlet released a video considered damaging to candidate Trump. Section 3 details the office's investigation into the Russian hacking operation, as well as other efforts by Trump campaign supporters to obtain Clinton-related emails. Oh, it turns out they did much more.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
All right. So this is the next section. Russian contacts with the campaign. All right. The social media campaign and the GRU hacking operations coincided. Now there's an interesting word. Coincided with a series of contacts between Trump campaign officials and individuals with ties to the Russian government. I mean, this is a roadmap, everybody. This is an actual, it's Google directions. I mean, this is unbelievable. This is MapQuest. This is Waze. This is just anything that to get from A to B. I mean, you got all these coincidences. It takes a lot of planning, right? Okay. The social media campaign and the GRU hacking operations coincided with a series of contacts between Trump campaign officials and individuals with ties to the Russian government. The office investigated whether those contacts reflected or resulted in the campaign conspiring or coordinating with Russia in the hacking, in the election interference activities. Although the investigation established that the Russian government perceived it would benefit from a Trump presidency and worked to secure that outcome, and that the campaign expected it would benefit electorally from the stolen information released through Russian efforts. Oh my God, what a sentence. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. Now, that is the partial sentence. Remember when Bill Barr stood there the other day and everything? I said to you that wasn't a complete sentence. It started with the bracketed T. Remember that? That's the whole sentence. Although the investigation established that the Russian government perceived it would benefit from a Trump presidency and worked to secure that outcome, and that the campaign expected it would benefit electorally from information stolen and released through Russian efforts. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. But prior to that sentence, it says that there was a series of contacts between Trump campaign officials and individuals with ties to the Russian government. Do you see what a full sentence will do for the clarity of what this independent counsel is saying to you? He's telling Congress they were talking to individuals with ties to the Russian government. They were talking to, Kavaladze, and they were talking to Peskov, and they were talking, but not to Putin, okay? Not to the GRU intelligence officials. They weren't hacking, and they weren't paying for the ads, but they were talking to each other. The Russian contacts, see, and this is the next sentence after that. The Russian contacts consisted of business connections, offers of assistance to the campaign, invitations for Trump and Putin to meet in person, invitations for campaign officials, for representatives of the Russian government to meet, and policy positions. Section 4 of this report details the contacts between Russia and the Trump campaign during the campaign and transition periods, the most salient of which are summarized below in chronological order. 2015. Some of the earliest contacts were made in connection with a Trump Organization real estate project in Russia known as Trump Tower Moscow. Candidate Trump signed a letter of intent for Trump Tower Moscow by November 2015, and in January 2016, Trump Organization executive Michael Cohen emailed and spoke about the project with the office of the Russian government's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov. The Trump Organization pursued the project through at least June 2016, including by considering travel to Russia by Cohen and candidate Trump. Spring 2016. Campaign foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos made early contact with Professor Joseph Misford, a London-based professor who had connections to Russia, and traveled to Moscow in April of 2016. Immediately upon his return to London from that trip, Misford told Papadopoulos that the Russian government had, quote, dirt on Hillary Clinton in the form of thousands of emails. 1 week later, in the first week of May 2016, Papadopoulos suggested to a representative of a foreign government, that would be Australia, that the Trump campaign had received indications from the Russian government that it could assist the campaign through the anonymous releases of information damaging to candidate Clinton. Throughout that period of time and several months thereafter, Papadopoulos worked with Misford and two Russian nationals to arrange a meeting between the campaign and the Russian government. No meeting took place. Summer 2016. Russian outreach to the Trump campaign continued into the summer of 2016 as candidate Trump was becoming the presumptive Republican nominee for president. On June 9, 2016, for example, a Russian lawyer met with senior Trump campaign officials Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and campaign chairman Paul Manafort to deliver what the email proposing the meeting had described as official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary. The materials were offered to Trump Jr. as, quote, part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump, end quote. The written communications setting up the meeting showed that the campaign anticipated receiving information from Russia that could assist candidate Trump's electoral prospects, but the Russian lawyer's presentation did not provide such information. Days after the June 9th meeting, on June 14, 2016, a cybersecurity firm and the DNC announced that Russian government hackers had infiltrated the DNC and obtained access to opposition research on candidate Trump, among other documents. The next month, in July of 2016, campaign foreign policy advisor Carter Page traveled in his personal capacity to Moscow and gave a keynote address at the New Economics School. Page had lived and worked in Russia between 2003 and 2007. After returning to the United States, Page became acquainted with at least 2 Russian intelligence officers, one of whom was later charged in 2015 with conspiracy to act as an unregistered agent of Russia. Page's July 2016 trip to Moscow and his advocacy for pro-Russian foreign policy drew media attention. The campaign tried to distance itself from Page and by late September 2016 removed him from the campaign. July 2016 was also the month WikiLeaks first released emails stolen by the GRU from the DNC. On July 22, 2016, WikiLeaks posted thousands of internal DNC documents revealing information about the Clinton campaign. Within days, there was public reporting that the U.S. intelligence agencies had high confidence that the Russian government was behind the theft of the emails and the documents from the DNC. And within a week of the release, a foreign government informed the FBI about Papadopoulos.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Okay, so what you got is the DNC and the American intelligence agencies knowing that the Russians hacked into the DNC. You have George Papadopoulos actually sitting there with an Australian ambassador, and he's drunk, and he tells the Russian ambassador that the Russians say that they have thousands of emails. They got dirt on Hillary Clinton. And then, within a week of the actual release of these emails, a foreign government, Australia, informs the FBI about this May 2016 interaction with Papadopoulos and his statement that the Russian government was going to assist the Trump campaign. And so on July 31st, 2016, based on the foreign government's reporting about what Papadopoulos was told by this Maltese professor in London, Misfud, that the Russians had hacked and have thousands of Hillary's emails, the Australians called the Obama administration, and then Obama tells the FBI what he heard, and the FBI opens up an investigation into potential coordination between the Russian government and individuals associated with the Trump campaign. So, you know what's interesting about all this right here? Not one single stupid word about the Steele dossier. Isn't that something, everybody? That the reason that I've been telling you that the FBI opened up this counterintelligence investigation had everything to do with George Papadopoulos, and had everything to do with this Professor Misfud, the Maltese professor, and everything to do with the Australian drunk, on wine meeting that he had with this guy in Rome, was the reason for this investigation to be opened. And guess what? It was. Had nothing to do with the dossier. Which, by the way, nobody had until October. This is July. July, August, September, 4 months later. And then the dossier is given to Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey Graham gives it to John McCain. 4 months later. This thing's already open. So much for the alternative universe of fake news, okay? Then separately, on August 2nd, Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort meets in New York City with his longtime business associate Konstantin Kilimnik, who the FBI assesses has ties to Russian intelligence. Kilimnik requested the meeting, quote, to deliver in person a peace plan for Ukraine that Manafort acknowledged to the special counsel's office was really a backdoor way for Russia to take control of a part of eastern Ukraine. That was the peace plan. That Russia would get eastern Ukraine, not just Crimea. Both men believed the plan would require candidate Trump to succeed were he elected president. They also, Trump was literally going to give the eastern part of Ukraine to Vladimir Putin. This is amazing. And this is, the platform, oh my God. They also discussed the status of the Trump campaign and Manafort's strategy for winning Democratic votes in Midwestern states. Months before that meeting, Manafort had caused internal polling data to be shared with Kilimnik, and the sharing continued for some period of time after their August meeting. So from August, September, October, right up until Election Day in November, they're getting polling data. And later on in this report, because this is just the executive summary, right, that we were supposed to get. But later on in the report, it says that the polling data was specific to Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. And that it was ongoing. It was up to the minute polling data. It was in the moment internal polling data that Manafort, the campaign manager, is providing to a Russian intelligence asset. October 7, 2016, the media released video of candidate Trump speaking in graphic terms about women years earlier, which was considered damaging to his candidacy. Less than an hour later, WikiLeaks makes its second release. Thousands of John Podesta's emails that had been stolen by the GRU in late March of 2016. The FBI and other government institutions were at the time continuing their investigation of suspected Russian government efforts to interfere in the presidential election. There is an open investigation at this point, and they're seeing this. That same day, October 7th, the Department of Homeland Security and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence issue a joint public statement saying, quote, the Russian government directed the recent compromises of emails from U.S. persons and institutions, including from U.S. political organizations, end quote. Those thefts and disclosures of the hacked material through online platforms such as WikiLeaks, the statement continued, quote, are intended to interfere with the U.S. election process. Okay, this is October. And they know, everybody knows, the whole freaking world knows. Trump knows, Manafort knows, they've been caught. And they're still doing it. Now the election is over. Immediately after the November 8th election, and remember, this is just the executive summary that Bill Barr refused to let us see the other day, because he said it was all redacted. Meanwhile, like two things are redacted. Immediately after the November 8th election, Russian government officials and prominent Russian businessmen begin trying to make inroads into the new administration. The most senior levels of the Russian government encouraged these efforts. The Russian embassy made contacts hours after the election to congratulate the president-elect and to arrange a call with President Putin. Several Russian big businessmen picked up the effort from there. Kirill Dmitriev, the chief executive officer of Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund, was among the Russians who tried to make contact with the incoming administration. In early December, a business associate steered Dmitriev to Eric Prince, a supporter of the Trump campaign and an associate of senior Trump campaign advisor Steve Bannon. Dmitriev and Prince later met face-to-face in January 2017 in the Seychelles and discussed U.S.-Russia relations. Now remember, Eric Prince has lied about this and said he just happened to run into Russians. He was just at a meeting in the Indian Ocean and just so happened to run into Russia. Turns out that's a lie too. During the same period, another business associate introduced Dmitriev to a friend of Jared Kushner, who had not served on the campaign or transition team. Dmitriev and Kushner's friend collaborated on a short written reconciliation plan for the United States and Russia, which Dmitriev implied had been cleared through Putin. That friend gave that proposal to Kushner before the inauguration, and Kushner later gave copies to Bannon and incoming Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. On December 29th, 2016, then President Obama imposed sanctions on Russia for having interfered in the election. Incoming National Security Advisor Michael Flynn called Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak asked Russia not to escalate the situation in response to the sanctions. The following day, Putin announced that Russia would not take retaliatory measures in response to the sanctions at that time. Hours later, President-elect Trump tweets, "Great move on delay by the Putin. Always knew he was smart." The next day, on December 31st, 2016, Kislyak calls Flynn and tells him the request had been received at the highest levels and Russia had chosen not to retaliate as a result of Flynn's request. Then on January 6th, Comey has to go, right, and brief President-elect Trump on a joint assessment drafted and coordinated among the CIA, FBI, and NSA. It concluded with high confidence that Russia had intervened in the election through a variety of means to assist Trump's candidacy and harm Clinton's. A declassified version of the assessment was publicly released that day. And then between January and February, 3 congressional committees, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, and the Senate Judiciary Committee announced that they would conduct inquiries or had already been conducting inquiries into Russian interference in the election. And FBI Director James Comey later confirmed to Congress the existence of the FBI's investigation into Russian interference that had begun back in July before the election. On March 20th, 2017, in open session testimony before the Senate Committee on Intelligence, Comey stated he was authorized to disclose that there was a counterintelligence investigation and an assessment if any crimes were committed. The investigation continued for another 7 weeks, and then May 9th, Donald Trump fires Comey. That action actually produced a criminal investigation into obstruction of justice. Prior to that, Donald Trump was not a target. And the special counsel decided that they could not charge because everybody had lied to them. Several individuals